Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? This is ZaZaAli. Today is Thursday. Is it still Thursday? Yes, Thursday. August the 11th, 2022. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. I am doing very well. Thank you. This is a subject today that I'm going to talk about that I have really been kind of talking about in a lot of different ways over the last year, 2 years for sure, but never actually like speaking on it in this direct manner. I think based on what's happening in the world and the times that we're living in, it's really important for us to start um, exploring the concept of natural law and universal law because we're also programmed by and inundated with man's law that has obviously failed us in every single way possible. So, because we are, projecting forward into the quantum realm, it's time for us to start really thinking and operating and vibrating from the perspective of natural law. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And this is specifically going to be my focus in the event this coming Saturday, August the 20th, speaking in LA. As you guys should know, all members get 15% off all of my events. So if you want to purchase tickets for that event, just let me know. I'll send you the link. Also, Brooklyn is confirmed for September 24th at Nicholas Bookstore, and then October the 1st at Unity in Atlanta, Georgia. So all the information is on my website and also on the group membership page if you guys want to get more information. But I'm excited about this coming Saturday. I'm very clear in what I want my message to be, not just in terms of the information that I convey, but more importantly, the frequency and the intention. I had a very interesting experience last night, and I'm going to share that in the video. I think I'm going to do it live on Saturday, talking about frequency wars and really kind of giving you guys an idea about what I'm going to be talking about in these upcoming events. And it is really important. I don't know looking forward how many times I'm going to be able to speak publicly. Like, I really think that this situation may end up for a certain amount of time forcing people like myself to be to operate in an underground sort of capacity. And I just say that I don't mean like I'm going to be living underground. No, we're going to live free and walk free and go wherever we want to go on this planet. But in terms of doing events where we're actually sort of coming together and strategizing and things like that, yeah, they have plans on trying to stop those type of connections, right? Because they know that that really is the ultimate weapon against them, our unity, unity in terms of like-minded, and frequency aligned beings. So I, foresee a time where there's going to be some time where doing events publicly are going to not be a thing for a while. So I really want to stress that, and I'm going to stress that on Saturday. Whether you come out and build with me, or whether you have other ciphers and other places that you can go and connect with like minds and transmute that human energy, which is extremely important right now. But I'm going to talk about that more at length on Saturday. I really want to get into this subject today: natural law versus man's law. I talk about the 7 Hermetic principles a lot throughout my videos, especially as of late. But I never actually have talked about all of them at one time, right? And so I think the subject of natural law in itself is so vast that I could do 10 videos and, barely scratch the subject, right? So I don't want to make it seem like this is, I'm telling it all in this or I'm explaining it all. No, this is just scratching the surface. But, natural law to me and universal law are one and the same, right? And so going through these 7 Hermetic principles, which are really ways of governing the self, because this is how the universe is being governed, right? Well, that's when we start getting in those concepts of self-mastery, and of, God consciousness, God energy, God frequency, quantum thinking, quantum living, quantum, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and hopefully by now everybody has at least a good idea of what I mean when I say the word quantum. I'll probably end up, not I'll probably end up, I'm definitely going to do some videos talking about, this whole concept of quantum, the quantum realm, quantum reality. But I've touched on this in other videos where I discussed, this sort of etheric web of energy where all consciousness, is perpetuated, all consciousness goes, right? And it's sort of this vacuum of consciousness and energy and awareness and thoughts and vibrations, multi-layered, multi-dimensional sort of entity and, space where whatever you're thinking and whatever you're feeling is actually projected out into this holographic screen and mirrored back into your actual physical reality. That's a very short, simple, estimation of a very broad and complex conversation. But, I just like to kind of give some context because sometimes I feel like when we're talking about spirituality and metaphysics, it gets kind of wooey. You know what I mean? Like, how does this stuff actually apply to my life? If it's, if it's real, if it really is of God, if it really reflects God, then it should enliven my personal power. That's how I feel. So what I'm gonna do is I have this book called The Meaning of Blackness. It's by Noor. This book is actually out of print, but it's a really, really powerful book. So if you ever randomly find this in a bookstore, you know how that goes. You definitely want to get a copy of this. But in it, he gives a summation of the 7 Hermetic principles. So I'm reading directly from his book instead of directly from the Kabbalion, which is where these books or these 7 principles come from. Now, just to give this context, this wisdom is credited to the Greeks, specifically Thoth, Thoth, but this wisdom was directly from Tahuti, who was an African priest or scribe or god, right? He was very high ranking within the Hermetic culture. And, there's some talk about whether it was him or whether it was Elohim, right, or a council of gods. But the wisdom that is displayed in the 7 universal Hermetic principles is credited to the Greeks, but this is actually all African cosmology. And when I say African cosmology, I just mean that this wisdom was expressed through Thoth and through some of the great alchemical spiritualists, if that's a that's a very nerdy way of me saying, the gods, the Elohim of that time. And so just to give that kind of some context for all of us, because I think we have modern spirituality that's sending people all over the place. And then we have, African consciousness or Black consciousness that's kind of very scattered and chaotic within itself, sending people all over the place. Like there's just so much information and so little context, right? So just to try to give things a little bit of context. So, okay, the 7 universal principles or Hermetic laws. These represent principles from a universal or cosmological perspective and explain the natural order and relationship of all things in creation, including a connection between matter, energy, and spirit. And I'm gonna, while I do this, basically I'm gonna read them off and then I'm gonna kind of, give my 2 cents in the context and then juxtapose man's law, right? So I'm really gonna be emphasizing natural law and then just kind of comparing and contrasting man's law, right? There was actually a simple breakdown that I found online just to give this a broader scope in terms of like how the world is discussing natural law versus man's law, right? Particularly, colleges and universities, theologies, right? Places where consciousness is sort of shaped and molded. It says natural law is based upon principles and truth, and it's inherent to creation. And then man's law is based upon dogmatic beliefs, and it's based on the constructs of the mind. Natural law is harmonized with, due to knowledge and understanding, and man's law is complied with due to fear of punishment. Natural law is universal. It exists and applies anywhere in the universe, regardless of location. And man's law differs with location based upon the whim of legislators or moral relativism. That's one of those words that, does it really need to be there? That made me think about the live I did the other day where somebody asked me what I thought about inflation. It's like, it's just another word. Natural law is eternal and immutable. It exists and applies for as long as the universe exists and cannot be changed. And then man's law changes with time based upon the whim of legislators. So you can think about the political paradigm, right? Especially nowadays with the political spectrum being so divided and so chaotic and so like insulting to a natural human being's state of mind. Like if you have any you know basic common sense, right? And my homegirl shooter said common sense is a spiritual thing. That's why a lot of people don't have it. But just basic precepts of being a conscious and aware being, you should be completely insulted by the level of conversation and dialogue and, whatever representation that the political world is presenting to you right now. Whether it's the United States President, Senate, House of Republicans, governors, mayors, local politicians, it's completely asinine how inauthentic and synthetic all of these people have turned out to be. And there's no way that anyone, particularly in the American judicial or political system, I don't know how you can maintain a righteous sense of self and hold your head up high and do God's work in a evil, wicked, vindictive, manipulative arena like that. And it's, while talking about man's law versus natural law, right? Imagine how many people are loyal to the Constitution of the United States and pledge allegiance to a flag, that has been steeped in pain and suffering and death and chaos and abuse and rape and murder and et cetera, all over the world, and particularly on her own land. Again, we're juxtaposing natural law versus man's law. So let's start with the first principle of universal consciousness, the all in all is consciousness. This principle establishes that the all in all, or God, as we call the creative being, exists as pure universal consciousness, mind, or spirit. Also, that all the individualized consciousness we have that all the individualized consciousnesses we have represent but droplets within the universal consciousness or cosmic ocean of spirit. Further, that all life in all aspects of the material creation exist as a part of this universal spirit. It is from this spirit that all creation was conceived and brought into being. The sun, moon, and stars, the galaxies, nebula, constellations, animals, vegetables, and minerals, and all other forms of existence are simply parts or aspects of this spirit. This is why the all in all represents the oneness or ultimate unity that is synonymous with the God. The all in all in conscious spirit, which is also synonymous with higher mental energy. It is the energy that resides in everything at all levels of existence. In our world, it envelops us and flows into our being, principally through the air we breathe. That's the prana, and that's the period and end of the explanation for the principle, the all in all. But that's that prana, life force energy, right? That's oxygen. That's why there's a very blatant war on the breath. And it's being, concentrated and reiterated in all facets of this life. I mean, people are sending their children back to school wearing face coverings, and how dangerous that is, right? And I'm just making a statement. Like, to me, it's not even the question of if it's dangerous or not anymore. It's the writing's on the wall. So the war against breath, against oxygen, and that life force energy, because once that life leaves the body, then that's when we no longer belong to the physical realm. It's the same that breathe in, breathe out, that whole microcosmic orbit, that life force energy that's constantly circulating and our re-stimulating our cells and cleaning our blood, detoxifying our blood, sending breath up into the brain so that the pineal gland can operate at its highest capacity, because it needs oxygen up there, because there's a lot of very high vibrational, intentional things happening in that environment. And the oxygen purifies and cleans the environment, not only in the brain, but all the way throughout the blood. That's why yoga is important, because when you do the different asanas, it moves your body and your blood flow in alternative and in opposite ways than it does, then your body is flowing, your circular system is flowing while you're just sitting down or standing up or running or walking or in the upright position. And that's one of the reasons why the symbology of Nut in UT, who was the sky goddess, or one of the archetypes in terms of the divine goddess and the council of gods, if you will, her bending over in that yoga posture. I think that like there's always a spiritual and then a physical counterpart. I think that the physical counterpart of that message was very important. Not just yoga. Yoga's not the only, and then the asanas are not the only, methodology of doing that. Salat is also a variation of that. Meditation is also a variation of that. So understanding that the all in all represents, that means that we are all connected. This is why I've been saying we have to get out of the race-based frequency, especially the children of the sun. The children of the sun being the collective consciousness of those of us that are still deeply tied to and connected to those ancestors that were the gods and goddesses and the kings and queens of this world. From righteousness, though, that held high standards for the indigenous and the African people of the world. We have a direct connection in a genetic lineage, right? A deep DNA signature imprinted in us. I know I do. And I don't even have all the proof from ancestry.com. I would never even go to ancestry.com to get proof, but you get what I'm saying. It's in my DNA. I can feel it in my spirit. Those great ones are the ones that I resonate with. Those are the ones that make me feel like all of this that we're having to go through and experience is worth it. Because we're gonna come out on the other end in supreme victorious fashion. Principle number 2 is the principle of correspondence, or as above, so below, as below, so above. This principle is the foundation of all higher knowledge. It provides a basis from which we can grow and expand in our understanding of the material and energetic universe by association. The phrase most commonly applied to this principle is as above, so below, as below, so above. In other words, we can begin to understand the larger phenomenon of our universe by studying the smaller things that are readily observable. And we can also grow in our understanding of the smallest elements of our environment by observing and understanding the nature of larger phenomena in our universe. This principle also relates to intellectual aspects of our environment, including language. For example, all languages are simply dialects of earlier languages, which implies that almost all languages are somehow related to an original language. The principle of correspondence establishes a connection between phenomena on all levels of existence, Thus, it also interconnects the material world to the mental world, the material and mental worlds to the spiritual world, and similarly, it connects these with any other worlds that may exist. Just as the knowledge of geometry enables man to measure distant suns and their movements while seated in his observatory, so a knowledge of the principles of correspondence enables man to reason intelligently from the known to the unknown. I didn't say this in the beginning of the video, but just so you guys know, this full video is going to be on my private membership channel. So if you want to watch the full 1 hour video, if it runs longer than 1 hour, then I'll have to do a part two. So this full video is going to be 1 hour. So if you want to watch the full video, you can go to my membership channel.